Before we get into this video, I just wanted to thank you all for the support you've given the Theme Park Files during its early stages. With now over 100 subscribers on YouTube and over 700 followers on Instagram, these are big milestones for our team. I also want to thank our team's own Zach Spodek for putting this script together, and encourage you all to check out our new blog, which I've provided a link for in the description below. So without further ado, let's get into it. Almost everyone has an amusement park they went to as a kid. For some, it's a small park with one or two coasters and lots of flat rides. For others, it's parks like Cedar Point or Six Flags. These are the stories of those parks and the times we had there. These are the Theme Park Files. In 1901, during the early years of Kennywood Park, a dark ride entitled The Old Mill opened to the public. For the duration of the ride, guests were seated in a boat as they journeyed through a dark tunnel area, often featuring theming that was either romantic or frightening by nature. At the time, it was a very popular ride style and was included in several different amusement parks across the country. The Old Mill at Kennywood was always known for diving into the more spooky elements. Over the years, the ride has been renamed and rethemed a few different times, as the Panama Canal, Hard Harold's Horrendously Humorous Haunted Hideaway, try saying that 5 times fast, Garfield's Nightmare, and most recently the revival of the original Old Mill attraction. In 2000, Garfield and Odie from the beloved comic strip franchise Garfield became the park's mascots. With this, a number of murals, signs, and even a carnival game began to pop up throughout the park. In 2002, Kennywood added their first Garfield ride, entitled Pounce Bounce, to the park's Kiddieland. This was a kid-friendly version of the Pitfall, a drop tower Kennywood had added with the expansion of Lost Kennywood a few years prior. In 2004, the Old Mill was rethemed to Garfield's Nightmare, a boat ride that took guests into the world of Garfield. Due to the spooky elements commonly found in this type of attraction, this take on Garfield was notably darker than Garfield's usual adventures. The ride was built as a 3D attraction, and guests were given a set of 3D glasses for the duration of the ride. The ride's queue featured videos centered around the ride, the world of Garfield, and the history of the Old Mill attraction. Depending on weight, up to 6 guests could go in a boat together. Once on board, the ride started with a very ominous voice welcoming you to Garfield's Nightmare.
Welcome to Garfield's Nightmare, a nightmare from which you may never awake.
This ominous voice was then revealed to be a mouse from the world of Garfield, who only wishes for some cheese. The ride then took guests through a series of tunnels and open rooms, each tunnel containing a Jim Davis original comic strip that showed a typical day in the life of Garfield, before the ride took you to an open room showing the nightmare version of the strip you saw before. These rooms consisted of Garfield animatronics, props, and sets, intertwined with dark imagery and special effects. After traveling through all the tunnels and rooms, the ride ended with a photo opportunity, and Garfield informing guests that the nightmare had seemingly ended. With the mix of original Garfield illustrations and elements of the Old Mill ride, Garfield's Nightmare was a unique experience into the world of Garfield. Some criticized the use of Garfield over the classic Old Mill theming, but the ride had its fans and was a fun experience for younger demographics. Just like many other rides over time, Garfield's Nightmare slowly deteriorated, and not much was done in effort to keep the effects functioning. The videos shown in the waiting queue were eventually taken down, and the ride faced other technical malfunctions in the years to come. Over time, a number of the ride's pop culture references became outdated, such as the use of the old Pepsi logos seen at the beginning of the ride. Occasionally, the mouse intro wouldn't work or featured audio without any video. The comic panels had words removed, and some segments of the ride had music playing in the background without any voiceover. Sometimes the water current moved too fast, and the ride's animatronics often broke down and would cease to move. Garfield's Nightmare had become an outdated shell of Kennywood's past. A few personal thoughts from the writer. From a personal point of view, I enjoyed the ride more during its later years than during its beginning. When I wrote it as a kid, I was kind of scared during certain sections of the ride, especially during the veterinarian segment. A nurse would suddenly shoot air out of a needle without warning. It always startled me as a kid. The creepy imagery of Garfield being swallowed by a fish and being cooked by a pack of mice also terrified young me. However, both as the ride and I got older, there was something about it being broken down, yet still operational, that really appealed to me. It was a ton of fun to go on this ride with friends, and embrace it. It was no longer scary, but rather humorous. As everything pertaining to Garfield disappeared across the park, Garfield's nightmare always stayed put. Though there were rumors every season of it leaving, and yet, opening day, it was still there. There was something to be admired about that. Despite the world saying, "We don't want you," one still perseveres and moves forward toward another day. And that's one of the things I loved about Garfield's Nightmare. So although the future may be filled with change, and a new ride that may objectively be better than Garfield's Nightmare, I will always miss that lasagna-loving cat and his presence at Kennywood. As he said when he took your photo at the end of the ride,
Doesn't get any better than that.